You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. I'm quite thrilled today because my special guest for the conversation is Jane Fonda again. Jane is a attorney to the podcast, and of course she's one of my two sister co-founders of the Women's Media Center, along with Gloria Steinem. And Jane is really, well, a phenomenon unto herself. She really is. She's brilliant. She's funny, hilarious, in fact. She's passionate about progressive causes, and especially so about climate change. But before we get into any of that, we need to go inside the headlines. And are they ever relevant? Okay, brace yourself. We're sinking. I mean, there is land that we're on that is sinking. So imagine that Earth's surface is like a stack of pancakes. The pancakes, or the layers of soil and rock, might appear pretty even and regularly stacked and fluffy, but over time, the stack can become compressed, thinner and shorter. So this downward motion of land is called land subsidence, and it takes place across the planet. And while some regions of land experience uplift, many parts of Earth's surface are sinking, and fast. And especially concerning to scientists are shrinking locations near coasts, which are at a higher risk for flooding as sea levels rise in a warming world. And hurricanes and extreme rainfall events also can bring more damage to low-lying areas. Here are just a few examples. Many of the fastest sinking places in the world appear in populated areas in Southeast Asia, largely because of groundwater extraction. But the U.S. also faces substantial land subsidence. There you might not notice land settling around you in daily life, but scientists found that many places are sinking faster than global sea levels are rising. Isn't that special? Increasing flood risk in coastal cities. Sea levels are rising at an average global rate of about 3.4 millimeters, or 0.13 inches per year. So the Gulf Coast, Houston, the western Gulf Coast, is experiencing some of the fastest land subsidence rates in the U.S. The Gulf Coast, where New Orleans is concerned, New Orleans may soon be toast. But the East Coast, New York City, with more than 8 million people, New York City is the most populated city in the States. And it's also sinking about 1 to 2 millimeters. That's 0.03 to 0.08 inches per year on average. People living in subsiding cities like this may see higher sea level rise, rates up to 4 times faster than more stable regions. If now the water's going up and your land's going down, then your houses will be flooded, says the geophysicists at the University of Rhode Island. Some of the land subsidence in the city are responses to glacial retreat after the most recent ice age. During the last ice age, ice sheets weighed heavily on the land and caused the crust beneath places such as Canada and the northeastern U.S. to stretch and sag. Places on the periphery of those sagging areas, though, such as around New York City and Chesapeake Bay, bulged upward. When the ice sheets began retreating about 12,000 years ago, those sagging areas started to rise back up while the bulging settled down. So you have to think of it like a balloon. If you push down on a balloon, parts of near your hand will go down while others will bulge up. And once you remove your hand, the balloon will try to bounce back to its original shape. For the most part, land subsidence in New York is consistent with what researchers anticipated from this glacial rebound, but, big but. However, some sections of the city showed higher rates of subsidence than expected. The weight of buildings around New York City are actually pushing down the land in some areas. Take that, skyscrapers. Contributing further to land subsidence. While the average rate in the city is 1 to 2 millimeters per year, some areas are experiencing as much as 4.5 millimeters, or 0.18 inches per year. New York City is sinking not because of the weight of the buildings, say the geophysicists, it's mainly because of the glacier rebound, but there are places suggesting that the weight of the buildings have contributed to the accelerated rate. There's also the mid-Atlantic around Norfolk, the West Coast, and California's Central Valley. There are quite a few. And if you combine this little news gem with the West Antarctic ice sheet, which faces unavoidable melting, that's quite a warning for sea level rise. Now, accelerating ice losses are all but unavoidable this century in vulnerable West Antarctic ice shelves, because water is warm around them, according to the new research, and the analysis means that scientists were too conservative in predicting about 1 to 3 feet of sea level rise by 2100. A study found that regardless of how aggressively humans act to reduce fossil fuel emissions and thus limit how much the planet warms, waters around some of West Antarctica's glaciers are forecast to warm at a pace 3 times faster than they have in the past. And this is forecast to cause widespread increases in ice shelf melting, including in regions crucial for ice sheet stability. That's according to a study published in the journal Nature Climate Change. Unlike relatively thin and floating sea ice, the ice shelves are thicker and hold back massive glaciers that contain far more ice. Quote, "It appears we may have lost control already of the West Antarctic ice shelf melting over the 21st century." That's a quote from Caitlin Naughton, the study's lead author and an ocean modeler with the British Antarctic Survey. And this means, she goes on to say, very likely that some amount of sea level rise is inevitable and we cannot avoid it. So, you combine the likely with the probable and add in the already too late. You have a pretty good picture of what warming of the planet will do. And now, before we get too crazed and depressed, let's get some good news about what we're doing to combat this. It's time for our first break, but don't go away because I'll be back directly with herself, Jane Fonda. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
It would be both silly and impossible to list Jane Fonda's so-called credits. All those Oscars and Golden Globes and magnificent performances as an actor. The best-selling videos of all time, her exercise videos. A series of books, including a stunning memoir. Precedent-breaking films that she produced. Giving and giving like a cornucopia, giving money to good causes, time, herself. Her energy is a natural resource in itself. A lifetime of activism on the front lines, fighting for women's freedom, for the empowerment of people of color, campaigning against poverty and ableism and ageism and you name the ism, and she's been a principled soldier in the battle against it. And now she's taken on climate change. Of course, this doesn't mean she's any less impassioned about feminism or fighting racism or ageism or anything else. It's just that with, even for her, limited time and resources, she's decided to prioritize saving the planet itself. And to help her do that, we need to go to her newly set up PAC, a political action committee, JanePAC, JanePAC.com. But she'll tell us all about that herself in just a moment. And here she is, Jane Fonda. Jane, darling, welcome back to Women's Media Center Live. It's so good to get you back here. It's wonderful.
It's nice to be back.
Well, now let's start off by saying clearly for people who don't understand why you decided at this stage to focus all your time and your energy, which is considerable, on climate. I think I know the answer, but I would like to share it.
I'm sure that you do, and I'm sure you feel the same way.
I'd like to share it. Go ahead.
Because, frankly, everything I care about is going to be harmed or even destroyed unless we cease developing new fossil fuels and then gradually begin to phase them out. Not all of a sudden, but gradually phase them out. Whether it's democracy or an end of racism or equality or a happy, healthy life for my grandchildren, it's not going to happen if we don't phase out of fossil fuels.
Yeah. Is that the major baddie, fossil fuels? If you had to pick one.
Yes, absolutely. Burning fossil fuels
is it?
Yes, is it. If we could stop that, there are other things that we need to do, like change the way we grow food. It's called regenerative agriculture. But the main culprit and the cause of the whole thing, see, when you burn coal, oil, gas, carbon dioxide creates a blanket around the planet, and the blanket of pollution. It's pollution up there, and it traps heat in.
Yep.
That's what's doing it.
Aha. So that's the major culprit. And all the rest are, in a sense, subdivisions of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about one of the subdivisions of it, or not. Maybe it is a major division. Recently in the New York Times, there was a very interesting piece that not only got my attention but curled my hair, which is normally very straight. Which was, the headline was, "Where Heat Could Become Unlivable Weeks or Months at a Time." It was by Scott Dance. And it was about how heat waves already can be deadly for very vulnerable people. But in a warming world, temperatures and humidity for growing stretches of every year will surpass a threshold that even young and healthy people cannot tolerate. Lahore, for example, in Pakistan, which is already an epicenter of human ills linked to climate change, could surpass that survivability threshold for 2 to 3 weeks out of the year by the middle of the century, for example. That's around the corner. And the study was published by the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. And under the most dramatic global warming scenarios, it could last for months. Yemen is another such thing. There are a number of countries, many of them in the global south. So the global north, Europe, might sit there very comfortably and say, "Well, it's not our problem." But what do we do about that? That's something that should get people's attention. Delhi, Hanoi, Dammam, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, and Iran all are on the list of unlivable in a few years. What is that? How do we address that?
Well, we should be taking this very, very seriously. Human beings started to be able to live on the planet about 11,700 years ago. And ever since then, it's been called the Holocene era. I call it the Goldilocks era. Not too hot, not too cold, just right for humans to live. And then starting in the 60s, the 70s, climate scientists began to notice, and this is important, they told the CEOs, executive committees of Exxon, what you're burning is starting to change the climate. It's starting to heat it up. And they said in 5 or 10 years, we're going to have to find another way to get our energy.
So they were warned. They were
warned 40 years ago. And we didn't pay any attention. And so we are now in a new era. The Holocene era is a thing of the past. Now the science called this era, period, the Anthropocene period, because it is a period when human beings have the major impact on the planet and on the climate. So it's a whole new ballgame for us. And they say that if we don't cut our fossil fuel emissions, that we're going to hit a tipping point where it's going to be beyond human control.
And there's nothing we can do.
And that becomes these places that you're talking about. They will begin to grow in more places in the world. People won't be able to survive. And unfortunately, we have this year more fossil fuel emissions in the air than ever before in human history.
Well, when they prattle on about natural gas, is that a viable bridge energy? I mean, until renewables are ready?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, here, for a while we didn't realize how bad natural gas is. But just because it's got the word natural in front of it, we can't think that it's safe.
Yeah.
Here's something that's important to know. All the easy to get gas and oil is already got, right? And so they're having to do things that they never ever did before. Go into very dangerous places to get gas and oil, like the tar sands of Canada, that we're getting oil out of sand.
Yeah.
The Arctic drilling, the deep water drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, fracking. This is all a result of now we have to scrape the bottom of the barrel to get the hard to get stuff, which is much worse for the climate than the easy to get stuff. So gas, we were starting to run out. And then in the 70s, the Permian Basin, which is Texas and New Mexico. It's this section called the Permian Basin. It's got more oil than any other place in the world, practically.
Wow.
And so they began, and it was very deep down. And so what they started to do, it's called fracking. It shoots water and sand and cancer-causing chemicals into bedrock at extremely high pressure, which fractures the rock, which releases hard to reach gas and oil. And fracking, when you say gas, what you really have to think of is fracking, because that's the way we get gas now. Fracking lets millions of gallons of toxic fluid into the ground at every single site. It can lead to poisoned groundwater, polluted surface water, and extremely dangerous air pollution because of methane. See, methane, we think of carbon dioxide as being the primary problem when you burn fossil fuels.
Yeah.
But methane warms the atmosphere 80 times more than the same amount of carbon dioxide does over 20 years. So in the short term, fracking for gas is worse for the environment than coal, or as bad as coal.
Wow.
Yeah.
God. Well, and with methane, they claim that the only problem with methane is that cows are farting a lot, and
Well,
so
that, it's for all kinds of reasons we have to start eating less meat.
yeah.
Like it becomes
But
something
they
that you
don't.
have
They don't
in the
mention. I know, but they don't mention fracking. They don't mention any of
Yeah,
the
I
rest
know.
of
I
it.
mean, they're trying to distract us,
Yeah.
but yeah, fracking is bad.
Okay. Well, what do we say to people where I mean, in the United States, we're being told that we have to drill. We have to continue drilling for oil and gas because we have to ensure energy security and because we have so much of it. And isn't that wonderful? And we can be the first in the world.
Okay.
And particularly because there's concern for Europe's energy needs because of the Ukraine war. And then you get the poor Ukrainians, and what are we going to do about them kicking in? So what do we say to this when we're
Okay.
arguing it?
If gas and oil, if we need to keep drilling and fracking for energy security, how come we're exporting most of it? We're exporting all the stuff that we're getting out of the Permian Basin from fracking. That's all being exported. And the excuse for that is the Ukraine war. We have to supply energy to countries that were dependent on Russian oil and gas. But here's the thing. The bankers and the oil companies have been planning the enormous expansion of gas terminals that we're seeing now in the U.S. well before there was a Ukraine war. And the war is going to be over long before the gas terminals have even been finished being built. And guess what? They have a 70-year lifespan. So building these things locks us into a fossil fuel future.
How do we get out of it, Jane? I mean, how it seems that it's self-perpetuating, which I know it isn't. Nothing is, or very few things are. But I mean, it seems that they have a real lock on it. I mean,
well, here's what they have a lock on, and
yeah.
this is one of the things that we have to do. They have a lock on our government. They have, and it's not just because,
for sure.
You have Trump making the CEO of ExxonMobil the Secretary of State.
Yeah,
I mean,
that gave me agita.
Fox and the chicken coop. No, but the problem is that so many elected officials and Democrats, every bit as much as Republicans, take money from the fossil fuel industry. Mm-hmm. This is what has to stop. And that's why last year I started the Jane Fonda Climate PAC. We give money only to climate champions, mostly concentrated on down ballot races. City councils, state legislatures, mayors, governors. Yeah, because that's where the work is being done on the climate right now. All the big breakthroughs are happening in local and state on local and state levels, and the Republicans knew that, right? They gave money. I mean, the Koch brother money went to these races that nobody was paying any attention to for years, for decades.
Yeah.
They
weren't
radar.
Glamorous. They weren't stars.
No, they don't get money. They don't get volunteers. And they took over state legislatures, city councils, mayors, governors, and nobody was paying any attention until suddenly we don't control elections anymore. Oops.
Yep.
We don't control. I mean, they were very, very smart. We have to take those seats back. Yeah. So, pay attention to down ballot races. When you go to vote, pay attention to the candidates. Do your candidates take money from the fossil fuel industry? Because if they do, they're never going to pass legislation that's commensurate with what science is saying we have to do.
Nothing made me crazier than the third party candidates, the Naders and the what is her name now? I've blocked.
Well, the Kennedys.
Exactly. But also the woman who ran on the Green Party. I can't remember her name.
Jill Stein.
Yeah. Crazy because they really they tipped they tipped a race and they were saying things like, oh yeah, well, I was saying the court. What about the court? And they were saying, the court doesn't matter that much. The court doesn't matter that much. Oh my God. And so we're facing this court. Yeah. Well, in terms of expanding your targets, in a sense, I know that you're starting to address hospitals and healthcare systems.
Well, I had cancer.
Exactly.
As you know very well.
Yeah, I do.
Had cancer.
I do know
and
very
well.
well.
And when you're famous, when you're famous and you have cancer, you're asked to speak every week. I get an invitation to speak to some medical group, you know. But what I've done some research, and what I found is that hospitals are in bed with the fossil fuel industry. All the big healthcare pension funds, for example, Kaiser,
Right.
Mayo Clinic, those pension funds, $4.9 billion invested in the fossil fuel industry. Now, there's an organization called Healthcare Without Harm, which is working with hospitals to decarbonize, and they're very successful. But what it made me realize, Robin, and it's really important, that we shouldn't just be, this is a climate crisis. No, this is a climate and health crisis.
Yeah,
because this is killing people. 8.5 million people died because of fossil fuel air pollution in 2018. And that's, you know, it's double the number of deaths caused by AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis combined.
Yeah.
1 in every 5 people die globally from fossil fuel related air pollution. People don't talk about the causes of death of all these people, that it's fossil fuels. The same thing that's fueling the climate crisis is killing people on a huge scale and causing a cancer epidemic.
Well, they're not going to realize it or do anything about it, I think, unless and until they understand that. So we've got
That's what we're trying to help. Yeah.
Bring it all back home. I mean, I have COPD, for example. I have a mild case. I'm fortunate, a very mild case. I don't need an inhaler. But it's because I stupidly smoked for years. I mean, that was 30 years ago. I haven't had a cigarette. But
you are very vulnerable
I
to
know.
bad air.
I know I am. And recently I had COVID, and I had a killer version of COVID, despite my many vaccinations, thank God. Because of the COPD, I was just, they tossed me around like a rag doll, and it made my brain pure fudge. But unless people understand that it comes home and it hits them where they live and die, I don't think we're going to get action in that sense on this. You clearly, Energizer Bunny, God love you that you are, have done your homework on it and are optimistic. Tell me why.
I'm not optimistic.
Oh, you're not?
Well, no, because optimism is saying everything is going to be fine,
but
not doing anything to make it so. No, I'm hopeful.
Oh, I see the difference. Okay, all right.
Right?
All right.
Hope is a muscle. I love what Greta Thunberg said. Greta Thunberg is a Swedish climate activist.
I know.
You know who she is.
I do, yeah.
And
she's the
she
kid.
said, don't go looking for hope. Look for action, and hope will come. And I personally know that's true. I was despondent in 2018, 2019, because I knew I wasn't doing enough. And when I started Fire Drill Friday in Washington and got arrested every week and had a rally, it was fabulous. My depression disappeared. The minute I take action, the fact that I know I'm doing all I can keeps me from being depressed.
Yeah. Well, that's what makes the difference, because if you're in action and moving, you don't have to, what was it?
But also, I'll give you plenty of reasons. You know, that the fossil fuels are investments in renewable energy exceeded investments in fossil fuel worldwide for the first time this year. That's worth being hopeful about.
I'll say
it's cheaper to build wind turbines and install solar panels than to drill for oil and gas, etc. And those techniques don't poison us, the wind and the sun. And the transition to clean energy is happening faster than anyone predicted. And the healthcare industry is starting to wake up. They starting to realize you can't have healthy people on a sick planet. Over 70 countries have committed to build low carbon and climate resilient health systems. And tens of thousands of hospital workers worldwide have committed to phase out of fossil fuels to run their facilities and make medical products.
When approximately do you think we'll be free of fossil fuels?
It depends on whether people wake up and start. This last year, you would think that it would have gotten everybody out of their chairs and into the streets. between the smoke and the
Oh,
fires
the
and
sky was
the
orange in New
heat.
York.
I mean, it's quite. It was hotter this summer than it ever has been since the beginning of the Holocene period.
Yeah.
So people need to wake up. If they wake up and they start voting climate champions into office, and they start taking action and not just being concerned, we can make it. We can make it in time, but people have to wake up.
What is our
and also,
yeah.
you know, all the lies that the fossil fuel industry have been telling us for 40 years are starting to catch up with them. In 20 states in the U.S., 20 states and cities are suing big oil companies for lying to us about the severity of the climate crisis.
Yeah, I know.
And they're sued to pay the damages that were caused because of that, including in my state of California. For decades, we were not able to get our governors, including the big environmentalist Jerry Brown and now Gavin Newsom. We couldn't get them to take on fossil fuels. But now Gavin Newsom is suing big oil.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a big,
I mean, he has moved. This is big because as goes California, there goes the rest of not only the country, but it affects Europe too, because we're the fifth biggest economy in the world.
I know you are. That's amazing. You know.
In fact, the Secretary General may think California is a state. I was on the floor of the UN during the Climate Ambition Summit a few weeks ago, and the only people allowed to speak were people whose countries had developed a plan to phase out of fossil fuels. Country after country spoke. It was so encouraging and moving. John Kerry came and asked to speak on behalf of the United States, and for the first time in UN history, he was denied. But Gavin Newsom spoke. And talked about how he was suing the oil companies. So maybe California has, in the mind of the UN, become a country.
Now, yeah, it's about time, I would say. I would be. I love you so much, but I would be remiss as a podcast host if I didn't ask a couple of tiny ancillary questions. Does this mean you're not acting anymore? I know you're consumed by climate, and I can see why. But this doesn't surely mean that you're not acting anymore.
Well, I'm not going to. We have a huge fight in California because after much lobbying and activism on the part of the frontline communities, when I say frontline communities, I mean communities of people who are poor, people of color, indigenous people, who for decades have fought to keep oil wells out of their communities. 3 million people in California live next to an oil well. And we could not get... That's a lot
of people.
We're the only oil-producing state in the U.S. that doesn't have a barrier, a setback within which oil companies can't go closer to communities. Finally, last year, our Governor Newsom passed a setback bill. It's the biggest one in the country, 3,200 feet. No new oil wells inside of that. The next week, the oil companies started collecting signatures, and they got a referendum on the ballot for 2024 that would overturn the bill. It's the most egregious, non-justifiable move on the part of the oil companies, saying, no, we can drill right next to homes and playgrounds and schools and churches, and you can't stop us. It's anti-democratic, anti-people, and they're going to spend $100 million. It's going to be really, really hard. Anyway, this is a huge battle, so I'm not working until after the election in 2024. Nobody's asked me to work, but because there's a strike. But even if there wasn't a strike, I'm not working until, and maybe I'll never work again. I don't know. I mean, I'll be 87. People might not ask me, but I'm not working on purpose.
That's never stopped you.
No, I know.
You know how incredible you are. No, I mean, really, it's. So you have this.
You know, women get braver as they get older.
I know
what
this.
The hell What do we got to lose?
Exactly. No. I'm there with you. It's just that my
I
brain
know.
turned into fudge when I had COVID, and it hasn't turned back into brain yet. So I'm just sitting here on the sidelines with my little pom poms, going rah rah, Jane
You,
rah. I
you
can't-
with brain fudge, you're better than most people at full normal.
Thank you. That's very nice. Well, I did produce a book in the middle of all that, but I can't
Of course
remember.
you
I
did.
can't
Of course you
remember what
did.
it was right now.
And it's fabulous.
I
It's,
can't remember
I
what
have
it
it right
was.
next. It's on the other nightstand. I have it, so I can't see it from here, but it's right over there.
God, you're funny. Oh, you're amazing and you're wonderful, and I'm awfully glad that that this is your key issue now, because the truth of the matter is, sexism and racism and all of the isms can't be combated if we don't have a planet. And if we don't have a planet and we don't have life itself, that's the big one. That's and some days I feel bad that I'm not making it my priority issue, although I never open my mouth without talking about climate. But the way that you have saturated yourself with knowledgeability about it, and the ability, of course, to translate it into real language and real passion that people can understand.
Here's something that I learned that I think is really interesting, that I think is true.
All right, go ahead.
If there were no racism, if there were no patriarchy, there'd be no climate crisis.
Of course, that's true.
It's part of a mindset, that triangulates people, that judges people on a hierarchy.
Yeah.
Nature being at the bottom, we're so split off from nature, we don't even take it into account. And then, white men on top. And it's the settlers came over from Europe to conquer whatever this was. No, they weren't quite sure, except that they saw trees and they thought flooring, doors.
That's right.
Oh,
lumber.
Houses we could build with this. And these people don't look like us. We can just take the land from them. It's a whole mentality that we have to change, along with stopping to burn fossil fuels.
But it goes back. It goes back even further than that.
When we burn fossil fuels, we are embracing patriarchy. We are embracing everything that's bad about. We have to make fossil fuels. I know what we should do.
What?
We should start a campaign where we'll never sleep with a man who invests in fossil fuels.
Or invest in fossil fuels ourselves, because women have a tiny bit more of malleable income.
We won't sleep with women who invest in fossil fuels.
Men or women, men or women or anybody, and we won't invest.
That shows how different we are than back in the 60s and 70s with the Vietnam War, because in those days it was women say no to boys who go. Remember?
Yeah, I do remember, which kind of pimps women. It was not a good thing, really.
And now we have to be really woke. Women won't sleep with men or women who burn fossil fuels.
or ourselves, or invest in it ourselves. No, it is the basic issue. I mean, my son has said this, for a long time. But interestingly enough, of course, it's women who mostly, not completely, obviously, take Gavin Newsom, but it's women who have been the water defenders, the forest defenders, a standing forest has no value economically. It only has value when it's been cut, or when it's burned, or when it's in some way destroyed by patriarchal people. So there's a clear differentiation between the values of patriarchy, which now even the New York Times uses as a term, and what we're talking about. It's just, is there time? Is there time enough? Is there time enough? And I feel, the weight of time's winged chariot, which is now double parked, in terms of time. But you just go on, you keep on keeping on, and I love you so dearly, and do more of this. And I mean, it must be very hard to turn you down. If I was sitting in the audience, I would sign up instantly.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. So, any closing words that you'd like to leave us with?
Well, I think, this generation, the 2020s,
Yeah.
will go down in history as the most important, because what we do or don't do in what's left of this decade will determine if there's a livable future or not.
Yeah.
We are the first people to feel the effects of the climate crisis, and we are the last people that can do anything about it.
Yeah.
So just let's keep that in mind, and let's try to do all that we can by electing people who understand that we have to work quickly to keep fossil fuels in the ground and to reduce our emissions in half in 6 years.
In 6 years.
6 years.
That's not a lot of time. That's very short candle burning. But we just gotta do it. All right, dear friend. Much, much, much love to you. I'm awfully glad that, we're on the same side, because I would hate to be on the opposite side from you. I would just, wow, I would pack it in. Woo, boy, would I not like that. But you're magic, and I hope that you will be able to wreak your magic on this subject, so we still have a simple blue marble in the sky that can continue having a life and a future, and health. I love you, and thank you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you for having me, Robin. I love you too. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
And I'll be right back with fighting words that are poetry. You bet. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Sometimes poetry can be the only real fighting words. As I said I would, each week I'm reading one poem from Harvesting Darkness, my new book of poems, just published by Spinifex Press. And I must tell you, I'm genuinely surprised at how smoothly, like a well-oiled machine, how smoothly the poems slide into place at the end of these podcast episodes, and how well they fit with the subject matter. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised, since they were written out of the subject matter and about the subject matter and saturated with the subject matter, but it's interesting nonetheless. This poem is called Icicles of Brine, and it has an epigraph, and the epigraph is based on reports in The Guardian. And the epigraph is, brine icicles are downward growing hollow tubes of ice, enclosing plumes of brine. Sometimes called icicles of death, these tendrils can leak from sea ice near East Antarctica. Ephemeral and seldom seen, brinicles form when trapped super-cold brine escapes from the ice and freezes less salty sea water. That's the epigraph, and the poem is titled Icicles of Brine. Soon tearless, I've used them up, shed my share in mourning, spilled them for joy, lavished them on blood-kin, lovers, and a dramatic virtuoso repertoire of pain. risking dry-eyed clarity, wrung out, about done now. I'm keeping a few in reserve, for the goodbyes, perhaps, but would loathe getting morbid. Grief for humanity's lives? Plenty, but that dries up fast. The planet? Maybe. It won't really matter. Earth dives into sun, sun crisps, universe drifts apart across widening winters of eternal night. So that leaves brinicles, trapped in an ice denser than salt, rare, seldom seen, until they leak. It's the curiosity that drags you back, the treacherous breath promising warmth, the cosmos newborn, the relenting restart. It's the thaw that annihilates the heart. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on social media at The Robin Morgan. You can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net, and you can find my new novel, Parallax, and my just-out new book of poems, Harvesting Darkness, wherever books are sold. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center live. Executive producer, as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer for this program, Julie Burden. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time on Women's Media Center Live.